So we are in another NBA offseason, and the Giannis Antetokounmpo trade rumors are swirling yet again. Something interesting that came this week, a potential three-team trade for Giannis Antetokounmpo involving the Bucks, Clippers, and Celtics. So Boston would receive Giannis, Bobby Portis, and Brook Lopez. Milwaukee would receive the number 5 and 27 picks in this year's NBA draft. Hugo Gonzalez, Isaiah Jackson, Derrick Jones Jr., Bogdan Bogdanovic, and a future first-round pick from the Boston Celtics. And the Los Angeles Clippers would receive Jaylen Brown. This is one of the many trades that we've been hearing over the last few weeks in regards to Giannis Antetokounmpo. There's also the packages for the Miami Heat, acquiring Giannis involving names like Khalil Ware, Tyler Hero, Jaime Jaquez Jr., picks, etc. But today I want to focus on the side of the Boston Celtics, even though we are going to touch on the Miami Heat a little bit as well. I don't think this is a good idea for the Boston Celtics. In fact, I would argue that the Boston Celtics actually do not need Giannis Antetokounmpo. Allow me to explain. What's going on, guys? Welcome back to BoxInOne, a basketball podcast and content creation platform created by Roischand and Joachim, myself talking right now. Giannis Antetokounmpo is in his third NBA offseason where we are hearing rumors of, oh my goodness, he could go to Miami, he could go to New York. New York was mostly what we were hearing at the deadline. Obviously, the Knicks are champions, so I think they're a lot happier that they didn't pull that trigger and actually kept the guys they had on their roster. We were hearing, oh, Giannis could go to the Golden State Warriors, and we saw that package was Draymond Green, Moses Moody, Brandon Podziemski, and the number 28 pick. Obviously, that's not going to do enough, and I think Kuminga was also in that package before he got traded to Atlanta. Now the Boston Celtics are in the driver's seat for Giannis Antetokounmpo, and I think it's really interesting, right? When we look at the Boston Celtics, they're going to be looking to breaking up the J duo, right? J Philly and Harvard Brown, also known as Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, who have been a duo since 2018. Brown drafted in 2017, Tatum in 2018. I think when we look at this duo, we kind of got desensitized to how well they actually are in the NBA. First of all, they're probably one of the longest lasting duos in the NBA, specifically in the Eastern Conference. The only other team that really comes to mind in terms of having a duo is Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic of the Denver Nuggets. But when we look at the Boston Celtics, they have only missed the Eastern Conference Finals 3 times since becoming a duo, right? 2018 they made it, 2019 they missed it, 2020 they made it, 2021 they missed it because they were injured, 22 they made it, 23 they made it, and they almost completed the first 0-3 comeback in NBA history. They are one ankle sprain away probably from going to the finals and facing the Denver Nuggets in 2023. 24 they obviously won the NBA Finals. 2025 they missed it, Tatum Achilles tear, and New York was giving them belt. In 2026 obviously blowing a 3-1 lead to the Philadelphia 76ers. So when they are both healthy and playing the entire series, they missed the Eastern Conference Finals 2 times since being a duo. They've only missed it 4 times, including this season. I think it's an overreaction, right? When we look at Jaylen Brown's comments on that Twitch stream a while back where he said, look, I'm proud of this season. This is my favorite season as a Boston Celtic. When they needed you to win a Game 7, yes, you did get walked down by Joel Embiid, but some of that is also coaching. Joe Mazzulla, for whatever reason, was comfortable having Jaylen Brown on Joel Embiid. Why? Because Neemias Queta could not guard somebody to the level of Joel Embiid. There's a lot of other moving parts in that series. Jason Tatum not actually being able to play in Game 7. The Boston Celtics reverting back to bad habits of living and dying by the 3. They died in that series. But from Jaylen Brown's perspective, I understand what he means by this was his favorite season. This is when everybody was counting the Boston Celtics out. People had them going top 5, even top 2 in mock drafts, saying, look, maybe you trade Jaylen Brown for that pick and you get AJ DeBansta. Everybody was saying, oh, Boston Celtics are going to get the 6th or 7th pick, get Michael Brown Jr. A lot of people were already writing off Jaylen Brown in the Boston Celtics, and then he went top 5 in MVP talks. Then the Boston Celtics went second in the Eastern Conference without Jason Tatum until March, and it's to the point now where people are saying that this season was a failure and you need to break it up because of how good Jaylen Brown actually was. When we look at the issues of the Boston Celtics, right, they lived and died by the 3 way too much, but I think they're also missing a true point guard. I think a point guard that's able to facilitate, but also able to break up the scoring pattern of the Boston Celtics, not just be a 3 guy, be able to slash, get in the cup, mid-range, make things happen. I think the only bad move the Boston Celtics made this season was trading Anthony Simons for Nikola Vucevic, because Vucevic did not add much to the Celtics team. Simons was actually that guard who could slash, facilitate a little bit, and break up the scoring patterns for the Boston Celtics. I think if anything, I would have tried to trade Simons for Zubac to be a paint protector and also rebound more and also be able to work in the pick and roll with Pritchard, with Tatum, with Brown. But I understand the Vucevic move. At the time of Vucevic getting traded, he was averaging 25 and 12 on the Boston Celtics. So honestly, Brad Stevens got tricked a little bit, but that's perfectly fine. It happens. Brad Stevens being one of the best executives in the NBA for countless years. This is really his first miss in I don't know how long, right? So we're going to give him grace for that. I think the thing about the Boston Celtics is when I look at a guy that could fix their issues, I look at somebody like a Ja Morant, a guy who, yes, has gotten a reputation for being a little bit injury prone, but he's going really low right now. When we look at what Trae Young went for, Trae Young did not go for a lot, and Trae Young was a name that I wish the Boston Celtics actually did pursue in the deadline because they were in need of a point guard. Pritchard is a great scorer off of the bench. Derek White is not a guard that can lead your team. Derek White had one of the worst shooting performances of his career in these playoffs, and while Derek White is a demon on defense, I do think the offensive downside he sometimes has, especially when Jason Tatum is out. When we look at his shooting splits, this guy was going 4 of 18, 3 of 12 from 3. He was missing shot after shot after shot. And Derek White, he can slash and drive, but he can't really shot create, particularly from the mid-range very well. And his 3-shot, it's hot, it's cold sometimes, it's yes, it's no. Word to Katy Perry. When I look at Ja Morant, I look at a guy who can slash. I look at a guy who is not the most consistent 3-shooter, but when he slashes, it's 2 or 3 bodies collapsing. Then he can find somebody on the wings. That's where you get Brown going. That's where you get Hauser going. That's where you get Tatum going. There are a lot of 3-shooters on the Boston Celtics, but it became an issue where the 3 was the first shot you were looking for. When I look at the interior of the Boston Celtics, I look at a guy like a Robert Williams. I look at the center market. It's kind of interesting right now, right? Because while they're not really a lot of great role players you can get for a bargain, there's still decent centers you can get on this Boston Celtics team. Robert Williams is already a guy you have experience with, and if you let go of somebody like a Derek White or some of these other guys on your bench, now you can actually open up space to get him on this team while keeping the Jays together. I look at Derek White as a piece to get somebody like a Trey Murphy III on the New Orleans Pelicans, right? Another wing who can space out the floor for Boston, who is a defensive demon, probably a better defender currently than Derek White, a guy who can guard these bigger teams in the Eastern Conference, kind of the OG Anunoby for the Boston Celtics. You need a true PG1, and you need guys who can either defend the post or just, again, be aggressive defensive wings. You have Jordan Walsh, you have Hugo Gonzalez, you have Baylor Shireman, you have Ron Harper Jr. You have a lot of guys who were able to showcase that they can actually hoop in the absence of Jason Tatum. And again, depth is king in the NBA again. The New York Knicks showed that when they went 10 deep in the playoffs and everybody stepped up. You don't want to trade away your depth to get Giannis Antetokounmpo. And here's the thing about the Giannis acquisition for the Boston Celtics. As great as Giannis Antetokounmpo is, I don't really see how him and Jason Tatum work. Giannis is not going to play number 2 to Jason Tatum. You're again going to have Jason Tatum forced to be the best passing guy on the Boston Celtics and not be able just to think about getting his shots. That's half the issue. Again, the Boston Celtics do not have a true facilitating PG, which is why a guy like a Trae Young probably would have been perfect for the Celtics. But if you want a guy who can facilitate and score, Ja Morant is the first name that comes to mind. I digress though. Giannis Antetokounmpo is also somebody who does not utilize the pick and roll a lot. When it was Dame and Giannis time, they were not a duo. They were 2 great players, and it showed. That's why they could go for 30 each, but they were not getting 30 each off of each other's gravity, off of the playmaking, and off of the PNR. It was Dame doing what he does from range, and then Giannis doing what he does, but they didn't necessarily work together. Now you're getting Giannis Antetokounmpo on a team again that does not have a point guard that can utilize his gravity and his slashing ability, and you have a guy in Jason Tatum who's probably not going to be able to score in the same ways because Giannis is going to be taking up some of that space. You also have a Boston Celtics team now that does not necessarily have a center. Do you want to employ Keita again going up against Embiid? Yes, you have Giannis, but are you getting Giannis the forward, or are you going to have Giannis play the 5? That's going to wear his body down more. It's a lot of moving parts in terms of actually fitting Giannis Antetokounmpo onto a team. And funny enough, when we do look at the Miami Heat, even though they're not going to have the depth, right, after they probably do trade for Giannis, if that happens, it's going to be Davion Mitchell, Norman Powell, Andrew Wiggins. But Bam and Giannis as a front court is actually pretty scary. Bam can guard 1 through 5, still play the center, but Giannis is also there to alleviate some of the pressure. Nehemiah Keita is nowhere near the level of Bam Adebayo. And while Jason Tatum and Giannis Antetokounmpo are 2 great players, I do not think they personally fit together the best. Again, who's going to be leading who? Who's going to set up who? Or is this just a guy who can get 30 and 11 on the Boston Celtics, and Tatum is probably going to get 27, 10, and 5 or something like that, but they're not actually complementing each other's games well. Funny enough, the team that probably has the best fit for Giannis Antetokounmpo is the Portland Trailblazers, right? You have guys like Jerami Grant, you have Scoot Henderson, you have Shaedon Sharpe, you have young players that could entice the front office of the Milwaukee Bucks. Now, granted, Scoot Henderson and Shaedon Sharpe probably are not going to be traded to Milwaukee because you already have Ryan Rollins and Kevin Porter Jr., but still, you have the draft capital that you traded to Portland for Damian Lillard. Now you get that back, you have a future, and now you're actually in a position maybe to tank for a couple years or be a top 8, maybe top 12 team in the Eastern Conference and be in a better position to get a top 3, top 2 pick in the draft with these new rules and get another perennial talent that can eventually become your next Giannis Antetokounmpo. So Portland is probably the best fit for Giannis. You got Drew Holiday, you got Denny, you got Dame, you've got Klingon as a good center, you've got Rob Will if you somehow keep him. You have a good team that now can utilize the talent of Giannis while also not being completely backcourt adjacent. The Boston Celtics, if you do get Giannis and nobody else, you're backcourt adjacent. You're going again to war in the Eastern Conference against guys like Tyrese Maxey, Tyrese Halliburton, Jalen Brunson, Trae Young on the Wizards now, with Peyton Pritchard and Derek White leading your front court. That's not enough to get a ring. That's not enough to even make a deep run, even with Giannis and Tatum. So just to summarize, if I'm looking at the Boston Celtics, you don't actually need to get Giannis Antetokounmpo. Okay, if you want to let go of Jaylen Brown, maybe it's just time to go your separate ways. Cool. But get a haul that actually provides the Celtics with a point guard, possibly even with a center, and you are able to maximize the value of Jaylen Brown and get depth and the guys you need back instead of going star for star, because in today's NBA, I just don't think that's cutting it anymore. With that being said, though, guys, that is going to do it for us today. Again, as always, if you enjoyed the content, make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Follow all of these socials in the description down below for daily Box of One content. For the last time, if you enjoyed this video, make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe, and we will see you all in the next one.